Thank you very much, dear colleagues. Tonight I would like to talk about the peculiarities of post-Soviet transition, post-Soviet countries, the current situation, and trends. Yes, you know that post-Soviet transformation as a social and political process implies a transition of regimes, and basically this process is described as an aspiration to democratic values with the goal of building democratic institutions. You know that the conventional models for democracy transition are incomplete and insufficient to analyze regime changes in post-Soviet societies. The distinction between the types of dominant political institutions, it means formal institutions versus informal ones, or the rule of law versus arbitrariness, marks a line between transition to democracy and post-Soviet transitions to several different regimes. The main source of political competition in post-Soviet societies are intra-elite conflicts and not pact. In such societies, there is no solid basis to establish the dominance of formal institutions over formal ones. And this situation can be explained by relying on the type and degree of political culture in post-Soviet societies, since the political behavior of elites and citizens is reflected in the very process of democratization. But most post-Soviet societies have a low level of political culture, which is a reflection of the Soviet era, where the totalitarian political culture was spread and which left its mark on the political consciousness of the post-Soviet man. Eventually, in some post-Soviet countries, these realities led to the dominance of informal institutions over formal ones. So you can see here the democracy scores of post-Soviet countries. The first group represents the states which are already members of European Union. You can see the scores. And I will continue. Actually, political scientists note that the state weakness as a distinctive feature of post-Soviet politics has two different measurements. First, weakness means significant limitation on the state's ability. In particular, the state monopoly on legitimate violence is undermined by the competition between state and non-state actors, some of whom claim to act on behalf of the state. Secondly, a weak state cannot ensure the rule of law. Even such a state uses slogans as dictatorship of the law. The use of various terms to describe this phenomena, such as oligarchy, feudalism, caciquismo, the power of local bosses, etc., only emphasizes the importance of this feature of post-Soviet transformation. For clarification, let me note that such formulation can be characteristic for those post-Soviet countries where the model of dependent political culture is dominant. In this type of political culture, citizens have their own perception of political power, but they are submissive to it even when the political power has a negative nature. With this type of political culture, citizens do not expect personal involvement to change anything in the activities of the authorities. They are only observers.
The next one.
Okay. The independent statehood, current or in the past, and the previous experience of democracy and market economy had to a positive impact on political and economic reforms. Those countries that had less repressive regimes, more liberalized cultures, and strong dissident movements under the USSR were more successful to develop democratic system and market economy, while countries where the Communist Party had experienced the most repressive rule faced huge obstacles to democratization. This phenomenon is explained by the different potential of democratization and by the desire of these countries for their preferred types of political culture, aiming to realize the political power as a political institution. Inherited social and economic inequalities, cleavages, and conflicts also played a significant role in creating opportunities for successful transition. Ethnic and religious cleavages, especially strengthened by territorial and economic factors, create significant problems for democratizing countries, and they can be used by anti-democratic elites. This is affected by the post-Soviet paternalistic consciousness and the autocratic type of political culture when the resocialization is hampered. We know that the comparative analysis of democracy indicators in post-Soviet countries shows that the better results were recorded by countries that prefer the European integration. You can see on the screen, like Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Georgia, and Moldova, and Ukraine as associated members. Countries that prefer the Eurasian integration, Russia, Belarus, Armenia, Kazakhstan, and Kyrgyzstan have correspondingly lower scores, as well as those countries that are still on the side, like Azerbaijan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan. Democratization is more transparent in European integration countries. As for the Eurasian integration, many difficulties are still standing. Without taking into account the democratic indicators and political culture features of Eurasian integration post-Soviet countries, these issues cannot be resolved effectively. The development of participatory culture in Eurasian bloc countries will be the most important factor to strengthen harmonious interrelations between EU and Eurasian Union. According to the results of Freedom House, we need to state that Armenia, as a Eurasian bloc member, has the best democracy score. This fact is interesting because Armenia is in a deep economic crisis, and it is very difficult to have a high indicator of democracy in these bloc countries when the country, as I said, is in a deep economic crisis. This shows that the Armenian society on its cultural basis is predisposed to democracy. The comparison of these factors prove the high democratic potential of Armenian society, and you see there the four groups of post-Soviet countries. The first EU members, the second Eurasian Economic Union members, the third group Eurasian Union associated, European Union associated countries, and no integration countries. You see the regimes, consolidated authoritarian regimes, transitional government or hybrid regimes, and consolidated authoritarian regimes. Only Armenia, as member of Eurasian Union, has semi-consolidated authoritarian regimes, and it is clear that the European members are already consolidated democracies. As a conclusion, I will set that for plural societies of post-Soviet countries, we have to note that the better model of democracy transition will be the consociational model. Why? Because this model has four characteristics, and by this model, the need for plural societies in post-Soviet space, it is very important to avoid ethnocratic values, which in their turn can lead to the development of ethnocratic regimes. So, the constitutional democracy has four characteristics. The first one is the grand coalition. Elites of each pillar come together to rule in the interest of society because they recognize the dangers of non-cooperation. Secondly, the mutual veto. It means consensus among the groups is required to confirm the majority rule. Mutuality means that the minority is unlikely to successfully block the majority. If one group blocks another on some matter, the latter are likely to block the former in return. Proportionality, representation is based on population. If one pillar accounts for 30% of the overall society, then they occupy 30% of the positions on the police force, in civil service, in other national and civic segments of society. And finally, segmental autonomy. It creates a sense of individuality and allows for different culturally based community laws. The main goal of consociational model is to strengthen the sense of security for each group, giving it the maximum opportunity to decide its destiny while not creating a threat to the security of other groups. A consociational future for post-Soviet plural states is realistic if participatory and civic cultures in those societies develop. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for this presentation. It's very scientific. I'm not sure, and I'm afraid that maybe this is not so obvious to put this model into relation between Armenia and Azerbaijanis, or Armenian and Turkish people, or Russian even. But of course, this is a kind of model, yes?
This model concerns a society, not the states, not the international relations. We know that some post-Soviet countries had plural societies. There are many segments, religious, language, cultural distinctions, and we know that there are some conflicts between these societies. And this model is successfully organized, for example, in Switzerland, in Belgium, in Netherlands, in other countries, and we know that there is some difficulties when the society or the political elites are not ready to compromise. This model cannot act properly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.